Good morning, welcome to EduSec Network. Friend, as you know, this week we have organized series of lecture on public administration, and the precise topic is comparative public administration. The other day we talked about introductory kind of things, the basic premises of comparative public administration and the major approaches in brief. Today we will move ahead and we'll try to understand what is the behavioral approach of comparative public administration, the basic features and contributors and main thinkers of the behavioral approach, and we'll also try to understand how this approach is different from the classical approach to different aspects of the behavioral approach of the comparative public administration. In today's lecture we will come to know and we'll try to understand the basic things. And for discussion on this very topic we have in the studio Dr. Prakash Chan. He is an eminent thinker of the comparative public administration, and he has written a book, a co-author of the book Public Administration in the Era of Globalization, and he is presently teaching in one of the colleges of Delhi University, Dayal Singh Evening College, and his writing has been also got published in different national and international journals. So I think his knowledge and experience on this very topic will help us to understand this topic and give insight how to understand the behavioral approach of the comparative public administration. So on our behalf, I welcome him for a research lecture on this topic. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Amarinder. In the last lecture, we discussed about the origin, growth, evolution, and various phases. The first phase of the evolution of comparative public administration, we discussed mainly the focus was on the traditional approaches, and this week, today, we will discuss about the behavioral approach to comparative public administration. Behavioral approach to comparative public administration is basically the scientific study of human behavior in organizations. It argues that we cannot understand the actual functioning of the organizational setup without understanding the people within it. Why people do act like in a particular manner. So this is about the analysis of behavior of human being in the industrial setup. It wants to set up a body of knowledge based on observations, based on experimentations. So it is a scientific study of public administration. It wants to build up a scientific study of public administration. The main propounder of this approach are Alton Mayo, Chris R. Grace, Herbert Simon, Maslow, and others. There are a number of factors which are given to the rise and growth of behavioral approaches. The first most important factor is the dissatisfaction with the inadequacies of the traditional approaches. The traditional approaches from Woodrow Wilson to McGregor, their focus was on the principles. They discussed about the golden principles. They said that these principles are universal. They can be applied anywhere, at any time, at any circumstances. So they are universal. They also talked about the mechanical aspect of human being. Means these principles are universal, and if you apply these principles to any human being, the result would be same. This is the basic argument of the traditional approaches. So this approach, this behavioral approach, is basically a protest movement, outcome of the protest movement of the traditional approaches. Second main reason of the rise and growth of behavioral approach is the increased use of modern techniques and scientific methods in the field of political science and many has been studies. There are a number of differences in the classical and behavioral approaches. In the classical approach, the decision-making responsibility lies in the chief executive. There is no decentralization of authority. No responsibility is given to the co-workers. Decision-making is the main function of the chief executive. But in the behavioral approach, more responsibility is given to the lower level employees. Means there is more participatory decision-making responsibility is given in the behavioral approach. In the classical approach, there is production-oriented supervision. Means the main focus of the supervision is how to produce maximum output. But in the behavioral approach, there is focus on employee, there is focus on the development of employee, there is focus on the personality development of the employee, there is focus on the how to give the best to the employees. In the traditional approach, there is more emphasis on specialization, there is more emphasis on centralization, there is more emphasis and more importance is given to the formal groups. There is centralization of power, more specialization is demanded and more formal setup is given more recognition. But on the other hand, in the behavioral approach, there is emphasis on decentralization, there is emphasis on job enrichment, there is emphasis on informal groups. The most significant outcome, origin of the behavioral approach is the informal groups. It is said that within every formal group, there lies, there resides, there exists an informal group. And without the harmony between formal and informal group, we cannot achieve the best in any organization. So basically the traditional view, the traditional approach has a mechanistic view of man. Means man is thought as a cog in the machine, as a part of the machine. He should be given, some universal principles, hierarchy, decentralization, economy, efficiency, they should be applied on any worker and the result would be same. This is the basic premises of the traditional approach. So there is no values in the human being. There are no emotionality in the human being is seen in the traditional approach to comparative public administration. But on the other hand, in the behavioral approach, we have the humanistic view of man. This is the human side of the organization. Human feelings are given more importance. Human dignity is given more recognition. Every human being is treated as significant, a significant contributor in the organizational setup. And in the traditional approach, there is focus on monetary incentives for job performance. It is said that if we want to produce more, what we should do, we should give more income, we should give more economic incentives to the workers, and the production would be more. But on the other hand, in the behavioral approach, there is focus on social and psychological rewards for job performance. It is said that we cannot produce the maximum without giving importance to the social and psychological factors. We cannot produce maximum only on the basis of economic incentives. What we need to do is to keep in mind the emotional factors, the human values, the reward, the dignity of the human being. We should focus on the social and psychological rewards for job performance. So in the behavioral approach, there is more importance given to the social and psychological rewards. The behavioral approach focus is on actual behavior of the individuals and groups. It analyzes the actual behavior of the individuals and the groups within an organization. It analyzes organizations as a social system. Social system means which is a part of the broader setup, which is a part of the broader system, political, social, economic, cultural, environmental. So public administration and administration is seen as a part of the broader system. It views an organization as a group of people behaving. They are not seen as a cog in the machine. They are seen as acting as a group of people, behaving in their own way. They have some aspirations. They have some different needs. They have some different requirements. So, in this approach, special needs of the workers are kept in mind. The behavioral approach is primarily opposed to the classical administrative principles. In the classical approach, there was focus only on the economic incentives. But in the behavioral approach, the focus has gone to the social and psychological needs of the workers. It is said that in any organization, we are dealing with a human being. We are not dealing with the machine. So if we are dealing with a human being is affected, being is affected by a number of social, economic, cultural, psychological factors. So if you want to produce more, what we need to keep in mind? We need to keep in mind the special demands of the employees, their social, psychological behavior, their social, personal problems should be solved before giving any assignment. They should be given respect. Their dignity should be protected. They should be given due respect. So primarily, behavioral approach is a protest movement of the classical principles which talked about universality, which talked about the economic incentives, which talked about the mechanistic view of organization. Behavioral approach is scientific in nature. It analyzes the human behavior in a scientific manner. It believes in techniques of empirical research, like observation, like interviewing. So it is more scientific. It believes in establishing a body of knowledge based on scientific methods. It is international in scope because it believes in making the field of comparative public administration universal. This is interdisciplinary in nature. The behavioral approach is interdisciplinary in nature because it takes its material from a number of subjects like computer science, like psychology, management. So it is interdisciplinary in nature. There are a number of behavioralist thinkers who have contributed in the field of comparative public administration. The first and foremost is Alton Mayo. Alton Mayo is known as the father of human relations approach. A number of studies were undertaken between 1927 and 32 at the Hawthorne plant of the Western Electric Company at Chicago. The major outcomes, the major findings of these experiments came to be known as human relations approach, human relations movement. In this human relations approach, it is said the basic outcome of this approach is that human being is not only motivated by the economic factors, it is also motivated by a number of social, a number of personal, a number of psychological factors. So what we need to do is we have to keep in mind these social, psychological and personal factors because we are dealing with a human being. We are not dealing with any machine. If we want to satisfy a worker, we have to keep in mind his welfare. We have to keep in mind his personal problems. We have to discuss his personal issues before giving him any assignment at work. Another major outcome of the human relations approach is it invented the informal organization. In its studies, it found that within any setup, in any industrial setup, in any formal setup, there exists an informal setup. If we want to maximize the outcome of any industrial setup, what we need to do, we need to recognize the informal aspect of industrial setup, the informal organization, the informal leadership. There should be a harmony, proper harmony between the formal and the informal organization. If you want to maximize the output of any organization, human relations approach also gave an importance to human dignity. It said that every individual human being has some special capability, some special talent. It is up to the management to find out that special capability, special qualities of a worker. So, after finding out those qualities, he should be given that assignment in which he can do his best, he can give his maximum. So, the focus should be on human dignity. So, the basic outcome of the human relations approach is it originated the human side of organization. it focused on the workers' welfare. It focused on the dignified labor. Another prominent behavioralist thinker is Chester Bernard. Chester Bernard believes that organization is a cooperative system. He says that in any organization, if you want to bring any outcome, if you want to do anything, you need cooperation of all the workers, all the employees. So this is a cooperative system. He also talks about an equilibrium, a balance between contributions and the satisfactions of its participants member. He says that there should be an equilibrium between the contribution given by the worker, given by the participant, and the satisfaction he is achieving from doing that activity. So there should be an equilibrium between these two things. He also says that the main function of the executive is to provide a systematic communication. He talks about free flow of communication in the organizational setup. He says that there should be a free flow of communication. All the employees are involved in the communication system. Information should be shared among all the employees so that they will be able to give their maximum efforts in the upliftment of the industrial setup. Another significant behavioralist thinker is Herbert Simon. Herbert Simon has given the decision-making theory. He believes that decision-making process is the heart of organizational setup of any organization. He talks about facts and value. He says that in any organization, in any decision, there are involved both facts as well as values. No decision can be taken without having facts and values. He has given 4 stages of decision-making process. The first stage is design activity. The second stage is intelligence activity, and the third and the last stage is choice activity. At the first stage, the problem is identified. In the second stage, an alternative path is taken. In the final stage, an alternative out of a number of options are taken. He also talks about programmed and non-programmed decisions. In the programmed decisions, we have solutions in advance, we have rules and regulations in advance. Suppose a student is absent in the school today, so there is a provision to check his absenteeism. But in the another kind of decisions, which are called as non-programmed decisions, we have to take immediate, we have to take urgent steps. There are no advanced rules and regulations. Suppose there is a communal right, we have to take an on-step decision. He also talked about bounded rationality model. He says that in any organization, in any decision-making process, we cannot have complete rationality. We will have both facts as well as values in any decision. We cannot talk of a complete rational model. We cannot think of a complete rationality model. So he talks of the bounded rationality model. Means every decision will have values as well as facts. So this is the bounded rationality model of Herbert Simon. Next important behavioralist thinker is Chris Argyris. Chris Argyris says that an organization should give an environment to its workers where they can excel their personalities, where they can develop the maximum of their personality. He also talks of matrix organization. Matrix organizations are such organizations where all are given participation in the decision-making process, where all the employees have same share in the decision-making process, where all have equal decision-making power. He also talks about T group or sensitivity training. In the T group or sensitivity training, he says that workers should be given freedom to express against the problems, against the deficiencies of the organizational setup. He can also give his views about the problems of the management, the deficiencies of the management. He can reveal the difficulties in the functioning of the organization. So he can express himself in this T group or sensitivity training. Another important behavioralist thinker is McGregor. McGregor has given a theory of X and theory Y. According to McGregor, there are two opinions about the workers of the management. There are two opinions of management about the workers. One is traditional and another is modern view. So the traditional view is called as theory X. In theory X, an individual is seen as a lazy human being. He is seen as avoiding work, not willing to do any work. So, if workers are not willing to work, they should be coerced, they should be forced to work, they should be given direction. In theory X, theory X also believes that people are not interested in the development of the organization. They are only interested in their own personal development. They are not bothered with the objectives of the institution, with the objectives of the organization. On the other hand, there is theory Y. This is called as an alternative theory, as a modern approach. to human behavior. In theory Y, a human being is seen as an active human being. It is said that human being wants to work, wants to take responsibility, like play, like food. As everyone is willing to food, everyone wants food. In the same way, every human being wants to take responsibility, wants to work. So, if everyone is willing to work, there is no requirement of giving direction, coercion. There is no need to force him to do. So, in theory Y, worker is seen as self-controlled human being. They are seen as self-directed. They are seen as self-motivated. They are seen as very positive human being. So theory Y believes in the capacities of the human being. Theory Y says it is up to the management. It is up to the management's cooperation with the worker. It is about how to motivate the worker. What incentives should be given to the worker in order to involve him in the industrial activities, in the organizational promotion of the organization. So it is not so that human being is lazy. Human being don't want to do any work. For example, if you give a person offer of becoming the Prime Minister, why he will not opt to be the Prime Minister? Everyone, that means everyone wants to take responsibility. It is up to the management to find out the capacities of a particular human being. So it is how to motivate the human being. It is how they should be rewarded, how to motivate them to involve in the organizational activities in order to achieve the organizational objectives. So basically McGregor talks about the traditional and modern views of organization. According to McGregor, what we need to do is we should believe in theory Y. Every management should have a thinking of believing of theory Y, that human being is good, they are interested to work, they want to take responsibility, they want to take initiatives, they are self-controlled, they are self-motivated, they are self-directional. And what is the need is to promote, to encourage, or to reward the human being. If you want to take the best out of any worker, any human being, so it is up to the approach of the management. So the management should have a very positive approach towards the human being, towards the worker. They should think like theory Y. Another important behavioralist thinker is Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow has given a theory of need hierarchy. He believes that every human being has needs, but they comes in a particular hierarchy, and he has given the 5 stages, 5 hierarchy of the need theory. The first is the physical need. The second is security need. Third is social need. Fourth is esteem need. And the fifth is self-actualization need. According to Maslow, in any organizational setup, what we need to do is to fulfill the needs of any human being according to this hierarchy. First of all, we should fulfill the physical needs of the worker. What are the physical needs? Food, sleeping. First of all, this basic food requirement, food need should be fulfilled. Then the second need should be fulfilled, which is about the security, and third is social needs, and then esteem need, and finally self-actualization need should be fulfilled. So it is the main task of the management to fulfill the needs of the workers according to this hierarchy. Suppose a person, for example, suppose a person is given a higher post. Suppose if you do not follow this hierarchy, what will happen? Suppose a person is given the post of a manager, but he has no salary, means he has no economic security. So what will happen? He will not be interested in that job. Suppose a person should be given a higher post, but he is not respected in society. He is not respected by his colleague. He will also get frustrated. So the management should keep in mind the needs of the workers according to this hierarchy. The behavioral approach, first of all, recognizes the important influence of the environment on human behavior. It recognizes that environment influences the human behavior. So what we need to do is to know those environmental factors which are changing the human behavior. Second important contribution of behavioral approach is it gives importance to informal leadership. It believes that in any formal setup, the management should give respect, should recognize the informal leadership. There should be a harmony between the formal and informal leadership. If you want to get the maximum outcome in any industrial or organizational setup, another major contribution of behavioral approach is it gives importance to individual motivation. It gives importance to individual needs, individual aspirations. It believes in motivating the individual. How to motivate the individual in order to bring his best. It also believes in group behavior. It believes that human beings are, any individual is a human being. they act in a group. If you want to promote the interest of the organization, what we need to recognize is, we need to recognize the group, importance of the group. We need to analyze the group behavior. It also believes in interpersonal relationships. It believes in good human relations. It believes that there should be good human relations between management and workers. It also produced the concept of job enrichment. How job can be enriched. How maximum welfare, maximum benefit can be given to the worker, to the employees. It also believes in management by objectives, that management should have focus on the objectives of the organization. It also believes in rewarding good performance. It believes that what we need to do is, we should reward a good performer. It will motivate him. It will encourage him to contribute his best. It also laid the foundation of human resource management. As a result of the behavioral approach, today we see the human resource management. So this is the major contribution of the behavioral approach. Despite a number of significant contributions of the behavioral approach, it has been criticized on a number of grounds. The first ground is, it ignored the non-human factors. It is said that it only gives importance to the human factors. It gives importance to emotions. It gives importance to social psychological factors. But it has ignored the non-human factors like economic incentives. But this is the major weakness of this approach. For example, if a person is not given a proper salary, a person is not given salary according to his post, will he be motivated to work or to contribute his maximum to his organization? No. Economic incentives are also important, besides the non-economic incentives. We can achieve the best in any organizational setup with both human factors, recognizing human factors as well as non-human factors. The second major deficiency of the behavioral approach is the exclusion of values. This approach has neglected values. It believes in rationality. It believes in scientific methods. It has totally excluded values. But without values, we cannot think of achieving the development of any organization, the development of any organizational setup. Finally, it is said that behavioral approach is mere an extension of the traditionalism, because the traditional approach also said about the universality of principles. They said we have some specific principles, and if we follow these principles, we can achieve the best. We can achieve the best output in any organizational setup. In the same way, the behavioral approach also talks about some universal ideas, some universal features. So it also believes in universality of its ideas. So it is the repetition, it is a mere extension of traditionalism. So it can be concluded that behavioral approach has given a new direction to the discipline of comparative public administration. It has broadened its horizon by including the human values, by giving dignity to the personal problems, by recognizing the social and psychological factors, by recognizing the non-economic factors in influencing the output and growth of any industrial setup, any organizational setup. So it has broadened the horizon of public administration. It has recognized that human being cannot be motivated only by economic incentives. We should also recognize the non-economic incentives like reward, like motivation. So it has broadened the scope and nature of public administration, and nowadays it has been recognized that behavioral approach has given a new direction to the comparative public administration, and this is being applied in a number of disciplines. Thank you.
So how do you think that this behavioral approach feasible in the practical aspect, especially when we go to implement certain kind of reforms? Because in theory something look good, but when it comes to the putting into the practice, there are some kind of difficulties. So what is the experience of last few years when people, in fact, when the state started adopting these principles? What is the experience?
I think the behavioral approach has recognized the non-economic factors like social and psychological factors of the human being. It has not neglected the material, it has not neglected the monetary aspect of motivation. So I think it has made a harmony, it has balanced the traditional, the classical approach to public administration.
Do you suggest that we should not take it in isolation, or that we should make it a supplementary sort of thing?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, then only can we have a better result what is expected from the bureaucracy of 21st century.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you are citing example of industrial revolution and how that changed the entire setup of the bureaucracy. Now we are moving from industry to service, service to information-based society. So in this trajectory, how you see that in coming years or the coming thinkers will give their direction or they incorporate the such principle and will give a new kind of theory which is expected to come?
I think in the coming days or in the expansion of the social sector or the information sector, the behavioral approach will always be relevant because it believes in human dignity. It believes in promoting human being. It believes in giving more and more power, more and more authority to the employees. So I think these days it is more relevant than the earlier times, because nowadays what we see, people are getting good salary, but they don't have rest. They don't are getting social recognition. So what we need to do, I think in the coming days it will be more relevant, because it believes in giving human dignity, it believes in knowing, it believes in focusing on the social and psychological aspects of organizational setup. I think without combining economic aspect with the non-economic aspect, any organizational setup cannot develop, cannot fulfill its objectives.
Okay. So, as we also have to laid emphasis on that, identifying the capacity of our worker, and accordingly we offer the job or whatever the post you're suggesting.
Yes.
So, what are the right mechanism to identify the capacity? Because sometimes it also depends on the subjectivity of the superior. He will decide whether he is capable or not. But in case the wrong selection is made, so what is the corrective measure one need to do in that case?
I think it depends on the selection commission, selection committees. They should know through interview, they should know through written exams that a particular person has specific capacities. Accordingly, he should be given that kind of employment, that kind of task in which he can do his best.
Okay. So it's up to the selection committee that
Selection
will decide.
committees, yes, of course.
Okay. So and there are one way they are looking at the classical approach, the other is behavioral approach.
Yes.
Then it also there are some structural, functional, and many more approaches. So balancing them, don't you think a kind of cumbersome job on the part of administrator? Because if we don't look at in isolation each theorist, and the balancing them require proper knowledge, and then kind of difficult tasks we expect from the administrator, because they have to also serve and perform the duty what is comes every day. So how can you think?
I think you are right. It's a very challenging job on the part of the management, on the part of the selection committee to know about all the theories, organizational theories, motivational theories. So it is up to the management. They should learn. They should make themselves up to date with the latest theories in the field of public administration, in the field of comparative public administration, so that they can select the best.
Okay. Comparative public administration, as we are listening to the lecture, we find the domain of comparative public administration is complete different than what generally laymen perceive. That comparative public administration means comparing public administration of one country to another, developing to the developed country this way. So the other dimension of, is this also a part of this comparative public administration, comparing the administration of one country to another, to see the overall subjects differently in the comparative public administration?
No, you are right. The main task of the comparative public administration is to compare the administrative setup of one country with another country. Basically, it developed in the post-Second World War period, when a number of third world nations became independent of the colonial regime. Then it was seen that these developing nations need a new model of development. So then at that time, at that particular time, the Ford Foundation gave funds to the researchers, and the major task of these researchers was to see the administrative setup of different nations and to find out the best for these developing nations. So you are very right, you are very true that the basic task of comparative public administration is to compare the administrative setup of one nation with another, developing with developed one. This was the main objective of the establishment of the Comparative Administrative Bureau in the post-Second World War period, and it was primarily for the development of the third world nations. The main task was to find out the best administrative setup of the developing nations.
Okay. So now when we talk about this comparative public administration, one more thing that comes to the mind is that to look up at things not because the developmental administration require different things, and when we see the prominent behaviorist thinkers, we find that, as you said, the McGregor and Abraham Maslow. Maslow talk about the individual growth, how individual try to improve, want to go the ladder of the need-based, like physiological, the emotional needs, and etc. And McGregor talks about two different personality, one is the X type and the other is the Y type. So in that, keeping on these two principles, we don't find that the theory of both somewhere conflict each other.
Development and
no, Abraham Maslow theory and McGregor, because one say somebody is the lazy, by nature lazy, he will prefer to be
you are right.
Well,
basically both are part of the motivational theories,
right.
Primarily. They belong to the same classification, they belong to the same group, but there is a difference. Maslow primarily talks about the basic needs theory. He is talking about the basic needs of the individual, and they should be fulfilled according to a particular hierarchy. On the other hand, McGregor talks about theory X and Y, means he talks about theory X and Y.
talks about two different
personalities. Like one is lazy and another is active. One wants to work and another wants to take responsibility. So both are different, I think. There are different approaches to study.
So putting both of them in one framework, in a behaviorist thinker, right, but how to resolve the conflict? Because one talks about the two different personality and that will remain in the society. One talk about the personality, individual personality that need to grow and they need to be provided opportunity at every moment.
No, in McGregor, he only says that there are two approaches of management. One is traditional and one is progressive. He suggests, he believes that what we need, what the management should do, he should follow the modern approach. Modern approach, which is called as theory Y. He should believe in the talent, he should believe in the capacity of the human being. So management should believe in theory Y, in the capacities of human being, in the qualities of human being. He should be given responsibility, he should be given task, he is self-motivated. So he talks about adopting the modern approach.
Modern approach, yes. Completely different. So, well friends, with this I would like to conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on behalf I thank Dr. Prakash Chand for giving such a wonderful lecture on this very topic. He very lucidly explained the different aspect of the behavioral approach of comparative public administration. I hope you have understood it. So I again thank all of you, and tomorrow we will have a discussion on another aspect of comparative public administration. Thank you very much.